Hello friends, in this video lecture I'm going to discuss the derivation of IS curve, right? As we know, ISLM model is analyzed using algebraic approach and graphical approach, right? You can use any one of these approaches to understand how fiscal policy and monetary policy influence the economy. When we are talking about influence of fiscal policy and monetary policy on the economy, we are talking in terms of GDP and in terms of interest rate, right? So as part of graphical treatment to ISLM model, or to derive equilibrium level of income graphically using the interconnectedness of goods market and money market. Here first we derive IS curve, then we derive LM curve, and then we merge them together to find out equilibrium level of income and interest rate in the economy or for any economy, right? So let us first derive IS curve. Right, I'll come to the definition part of IS curve later on after I have derived IS curve, right? So how to derive it? As you know, as per Hicks theory of income determination, which is nothing but extension of Keynesian model of income determination, right? Hicks talked about marginal efficiency of capital, according to which the investment in the economy and interest rate in the economy are inversely related, right? That means if interest rate falls, investment in the economy would rise. If interest rate rises, investment would fall. Remember here, investment means addition to the capital stock, right? Addition to the production capacity in the economy, right? So that inverse relationship between investment and interest rate has been shown here in this diagram. It's a ready-made diagram for you. I am not drawing a phrase for saving the time. So see, what are we getting? We are having here, if interest rate is I naught, right? Investment is capital I naught, right? When interest rate falls from I naught to I1, investment in the economy rises from capital I naught to capital I1, right? Definitely, I mean, generally we'll observe that when interest rate in the economy falls, business sector become optimistic. For business sector, the cost of borrowing goes down and the business sector borrows more from the banks for the purpose of setting up plants, setting up projects, right? And that raises the level of investment in the economy, that raises the level of capital formation in the economy, right? So that is what your relationship between interest rate and investment, right? So once we have understood the relationship between investment and interest rate, we can easily relate interest rate with the level of income, but then we have to root through goods market equilibrium conditions, right? Now here there are two diagrams. They are the main diagrams which are used to derive IS curve. This is the additional diagram you may not draw when you are deriving IS curve. This is mainly for making you understand the relationship between interest rate and investment. However, the first diagram here stands for goods market, right? What is the condition of goods market equilibrium? Algebraically, your output must be equal to aggregate demand, right? That is what the conditions of equilibrium in goods market, right? Now, how do we show that conditions of equilibrium in goods market graphically, right? So you must be familiar with Keynes theory of income determinations, right? So when we deal with Keynes theory of income determination and we try to arrive at, or we try to find out equilibrium level of income graphically, this is the diagram we draw, right? So in this diagram, we are measuring aggregate demand along with y-axis and income level along with x-axis, right? So aggregate demand along with y-axis and income level along with x-axis, right? Aggregate demand, which is summation of consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus net export, right, is upward sloping. Remember, the slope of this aggregate demand line is the slope of consumption line, right? In Keynesian theory of income determination model, we derive this aggregate demand line by vertically summing up all lines which correspond to different components of aggregate demand, which are consumption, investment, government expenditure and net export, right? Now this aggregate demand which we have derived, that aggregate demand we have derived corresponding to I0 interest rate, right? At this I0 interest rate, first we find out what is the level of investment, and as long as interest rate remains fixed at I0, investment also remain fixed, right? And at I0 interest rate, investment line is what you call horizontal, right? So that investment line has already been taken care in the level of aggregate demand line here, right? Now, so this aggregate demand line is corresponding to I0 interest rate. Which interest rate? I0 interest rate, okay? Now, once we have drawn this aggregate demand line, can we find out equilibrium level of income? Yes, with the help of this 45-degree line. What is the significance of 45-degree line? That all points on this 45-degree line are characterized by equilibrium in goods market. Why? Because each point on this line has got equal distance from aggregate demand and line and income line. That means each point would be characterized by equality of aggregate demand and income level, right? Now, we can find out equilibrium level of income by looking at the intersection of this aggregate demand line to 45-degree line, right? So it is the point E0 on this aggregate demand line which gives us equilibrium level of income, or it is the point E0 will give us that level of income at which economy, goods market in the economy would be in equilibrium. And what is that income level? Y0, right? So on the basis of this aggregate demand line over here and 45-degree line, we are able to derive equilibrium level of income Y0, and this Y0 equilibrium level of income is corresponding to which level of interest rate? I0 interest rate. Now we can identify we can identify the combinations of equilibrium income and interest rate in the second diagram, which has been shown below the first diagram, right, where we are measuring interest rate on y-axis and income level on x-axis, right? Now this is your y0, right? So we can identify y0 in the second diagram, which is just below this y0, right? Now this y0 is corresponding to which interest rate such that goods market is in equilibrium? I0, right? I0, right? So this I0 I have drawn and identified in this diagram over here, right? So this equilibrium level of income Y0 is associated with this interest rate I0 such that goods market is in equilibrium, right? Now, suppose in the economy rate of interest rises, right? And the rate of interest might rise because, let us say rate of interest falls here, because I have shown here the fall of rate of interest effect on equilibrium level of income, right? So suppose governor of the central bank reduces repo rate or reduces CRR, right? That raises the level of money supply in the economy. Now, when money supply rises, the rate of interest falls. Now, when the rate of interest falls, what will happen? Business sector, right, would be more happy to have funds at lower rate of interest. They would borrow more and invest more. We are assuming that all other conditions are remaining constant, right? So there is sufficient demand. So they borrow more, from the bank when the rate of interest goes down, and they raise the level of investment in the economy, right? So here when interest rate falls from I0 to I1, what happens? Investment rises from I0 to I1. Now when investment rises, what will happen in the first diagram? Aggregate demand will jump up, right? Why aggregate demand will jump up? Because aggregate demand consists of investment. Now the investment has gone up. How much investment has gone up? Delta I, which is exactly equal to D into change in interest rate, right? So investment has gone up, and once investment has gone up, right, now the investment previously, let us say investment was I, now it is I plus delta I. So higher level of investment. So the investment has gone up, right? And when investment goes up, your aggregate demand shifts up exactly by the point of rise in investment. So you get new aggregate demand. But this aggregate demand that we are drawing is corresponding to which interest rate? I1 interest rate. Now, does Y not remains equilibrium level of income after rise in aggregate demand? No. Why? Because there is excess demand in the economy. Business sector would experience decline in inventory, and therefore they would produce more, right? They would produce more. Now more productions of goods and services would lead to rise in income level. That means your income level would rise, and till what point it will rise? Till it reaches to Y1, because as long as it is below Y1, right, there is always excess demand in the economy, right? So when aggregate demand rises, your new equilibrium level of income is derived or is identified on the basis of that at which point of this 45-degree line the new aggregate demand line intersects. So it intersects at E1, right? And E1 gives us Y1 level of new equilibrium income. Now this new equilibrium level of income is associated with which level of interest rate? I1 interest rate, right? I1 interest rate. So this I1 interest rate we identify here, right? So when interest rate goes down from I0 to I1, what happens? Your equilibrium income rises from Y0 to Y1, right? And now we get that Y1, or identify that Y1 in the second diagram over here. So once we have identified in the second diagram new equilibrium level of income, which is corresponding to I1 interest rate, that gives us new combinations of income and interest rate at which goods market is in equilibrium, right? So we get two combinations of income and interest rate. One is A and another one is B, and at both the points goods market is in equilibrium, right? Now hypothetically we have assumed this two level of interest rate, right? There could be various level of interest rate. Now at various level of interest rate there would be various level of investment, and therefore various level of aggregate demand, right? And various level of aggregate demand would result into various level of equilibrium level of income, right? And therefore we would get various combinations in between A and B of what? Income and interest rate, where each combination would be characterized by equilibrium in the goods market. Now if we join those A and B points and further we extend this line, right, towards left and towards the right, what do we get? Right, by joining A and B line we get IS curve. This is what we call IS curve. So we have derived IS curve, which is made of what? Which is made up of various combinations of income and interest rate, where each combination is characterized by what? Condition of equilibrium in goods market. So this is what becomes definitions of IS curve. That IS curve is made of various combinations of income and interest rate, where each combination is characterized by goods market equilibrium. Now if you go to IS equation that we had derived algebraically, you get this one. This is your IS equations, right? Now here what do you find? That income and interest rate are inversely related. If interest rate falls, as per this equation, Y will rise. If interest rate rises, Y will fall, right? The same thing is happening here also, right? The same kind of relationship between interest rate and income we are able to derive graphically, right? Here also what are we finding? That when interest rate is falling, income is rising. when interest rate is rising, income is falling, right? And therefore we get this IS line which shows inverse relationship between income and interest rate. What is the economic logic? Economic logic of this inverse relationship is that when interest rate in the economy falls, investment rises. When investment rises, through multiplier, income rises, right? Similarly, when interest rate rises in the economy, investment falls, and when investment falls, through multiplier, income falls. And that is what your IS curve explains, right? Now, once we have done this IS curve, we also need to discuss what determines the slope of IS curve, what determines the location of IS curve, right? So the slope part we will discuss later on, but here it becomes very important and easy to discuss that what will shift the IS curve without affecting its slope. Remember, the location of IS curve will shift rightward or leftward only when autonomous components of aggregate demand change, right? Autonomous components of aggregate demand change. That means if autonomous components of aggregate demand rises, IS curve will shift rightward. If autonomous components of aggregate demand falls, IS curve will shift leftward, right? Now, since we are talking about the implications, we are talking about the model which is going to discuss the implications of fiscal policy and monetary policy. So let us here look at that what happens to IS curve if government expenditure rises. We are assuming, or as we already have discussed, that government expenditure is autonomous components of aggregate demand. So if government expenditure rises, what will happen? Autonomous components of aggregate demand would rise. That is, your A bar would rise, right? So suppose if government expenditure rises, right? Now previously it was G bar, now it becomes G bar plus delta G, right? This is called expansionary fiscal policy. When government raises expenditure, right, that policy of raising expenditure is called expansionary fiscal policy, right? So if government expenditure rises, now this rise in government expenditure takes place for all level of interest rate, right? Whether interest rate is I0 or I1, there is higher level of government expenditure, right? So suppose at I0, okay, if government expenditure has increased, then what will be? Then what will be your aggregate demand line? Aggregate demand line will not remain this, right? It will shift up. How much it will shift up? It will shift up to the extent of rise of government expenditure. So let us say this is the rise of government expenditure because of expansionary fiscal policy. So what will happen? The aggregate demand line corresponding to I0, AD dash I am saying, corresponding to I0, right? So aggregate demand would shift up, right? Why this shift has happened? This shift has happened because of rise in government expenditure. Now, so is Y0 is equilibrium level of income corresponding to I0 interest rate? No, because the aggregate demand is intersecting this 45-degree line at E0 dash, right? And what will be then equilibrium level of income? Y0 dash. So this is your new equilibrium income, and that has happened at I0 interest rate. Why? Because the government expenditure has gone up, and when the government expenditure goes up, income rises through multiplier, right? Now we can identify this I0 dash in the second diagram. Let us say it is here, I0 dash. Now this I0 dash is associated with which level of interest rate? I0. Now where the combination would be shown? combination would be shown right exactly to the right of point A, right? So let us say that point is shown here at point A dash, right? So this point A dash shows what? It shows combinations of equilibrium income Y naught dash and I naught, right? Fine. Now, suppose interest rate goes down, right? What will happen? Investment will go up. That means this aggregate demand, AD dash, which is corresponding to I naught interest rate, will go up. And how much will it go up? Exactly by the magnitude that black aggregate demand had shifted, right? Because the B remains same, right? Investment and interest rate relationship remains the same, right? So this red line will jump up. How much it will jump up? Exactly by the same amount where it used to jump up previously, right? So this is your delta I. So you get new aggregate demand line, right? Which is, I'm calling here AD dash corresponding to I1 interest rate, right? Now once interest rate has gone down, Y naught dash is no more equilibrium level of income corresponding to higher level of government expenditure. What is the equilibrium level of income? That we can find out again by looking at where this aggregate demand AD dash I naught is intersecting 45-degree line. So it is here, E1 dash. Now we can identify the new equilibrium level of income, which is Y1. Now this Y1 dash equilibrium level of income is corresponding to which level of interest rate such that goods market is in equilibrium? I1. So we can show this new combinations of income and interest rate in the second diagram here, right? By identifying new equilibrium level of income over here. So this is your Y1 dash. Now this Y1 dash is associated with which level of interest rate? I1, right? Now this will be shown exactly to the right side of point B. Here, let us call this point B dash. So B dash is what? B dash is combinations of new equilibrium income, which is Y1 dash and interest rate I1, right? Now similarly, we can assume various level of interest rate and correspondingly various level of equilibrium income, right? And therefore various points between A dash and B dash which show different combinations of income and interest rate at which goods market would be in equilibrium, the way we have at A dash and B dash. Now if we join A dash and B dash, what do we get? We get new IS curve. Let us put it IS dash, showing that it is different from the previous IS line, right? Though we are using different colors, so we are able to identify different IS curve. So this is what your new IS line. Now why has IS line shifted rightward? It has shifted rightward primarily because of rise in government expenditure. What does it indicate? It indicates that when IS curve shifts rightward, it stands for expansionary fiscal policy. Similarly, if government expenditure falls, what would happen? With the same logic, this IS curve will shift leftward. So the rightward shift of IS curve stands for expansionary fiscal policy, and leftward shift of IS curve stands for contractionary fiscal policy, right? Now as far as rightward shift or leftward shift or horizontal shift of IS curve is concerned, the magnitude of shift would always be equal to, in case if the shift is taking place due to rise in government expenditure, would be exactly equal to alpha G multiplied by delta G, right? That means at the same interest rate, in case if government expenditure rises, the income would rise by the magnitude of alpha G into delta G, which we used to observe in Keynesian model of income determination, where we are assuming that there is no change in interest rate, there is no change in money market, right? So this is what would be the horizontal shift of IS curve, right? So what do we get here? We get here, number one, that IS curve is downward sloping. IS curve shows various combinations of income and interest rate, where each combination of income and interest rate would be characterized by equilibrium in goods market. And when there is expansionary fiscal policy, IS curve will shift rightward. The slope of IS curve will not change, right? Only the location of IS curve would change. So when there is expansionary fiscal policy, IS curve will shift rightward. When there is contractionary fiscal policy, IS curve will shift leftward, right? This point you need to remember to understand the implications of fiscal policy in determinations of equilibrium level of income and interest rate when we do the final analysis of IS and LM model. But to understand its implications at economy level, at aggregate level, right, we need to take into consideration the LM curve also, but that LM curve derivation will do in the separate lecture. However, one more aspect is left here, that okay, the location of IS curve is determined by autonomous components of aggregate demand, government expenditure being one of them, but what determines the slope of IS curve, right? That is the another point that we will take up in the other lecture. Thank you so much for having patience and watching this derivation of IS curve. Thank you so much.